No, this is a f***ing shit. Why can't I get a goddamn good angle on this? Hello champions, it is Lord Voltar, and today we're going to be installing my SNES RGB board into an SNES one-chip Mini. Now, a lot of you have requested this video, so I'll be going over good soldering techniques to get this nice fit and finish that you want. So sit back, strap on, and let's get to work. Okay, so the first step in the whole process, of course, is disassembling this. So let's flip this bastard around, let's remove some screws, and let's look at the guts of this thing. Here we go. And as always, we'll do the topple and flopple. Let's see how good I did. We did it. Like a champion. Okay, so in order to remove the main board totally from the casing, there are 7 screws that we have to remove, so let's do it. Alright, so now that we've totally stripped this board down, everything that we need to do as far as RGB is concerned is on the back side of the board. So let's flip this little girl around. Let's zoom into the areas of interest. So with my specific design, we actually bypass the sRGB video encoder found on board, and we supplement that with a THS7374 4-line video driver. So there are only 4 points of interest that we need to be concerned about when installing this kit in particular for grabbing the composite sync and RGB signals. So here they are. The pin that I'm pointing at here, the small via, this is composite sync. It's right here. It's beautiful. It's there for your. It's there for your bodies emotionally. These 3 pins, 3 vias, I'm sorry, up here, 1, 2, and 3. The first is red. The second is green. The third is blue. So this is the area that we'll be working with when wiring up the my SNES RGB board for RGB video. So as you can see here in the shot, I have a 4-conductor ribbon wire, and I have actually taken a pair of, just a pair of flush cuts, and I've went in between each conductor, and I've just separated them on the ends from the plastic jacketing. So after I do this, what I like to do is I'll take a very cheap pair. As a matter of fact, you can buy this specific pair off of eBay for $11. Automatic wire strippers. So what I'll do is I'll just bring this cable in, and I'm sorry if I lose focus, this is kind of difficult to do. So I'll position the cable and I'll cut just as much as I need. So you see this coming down on the conductor. Now it's making good contact, and you just pull very gently like this, just like that, and you have stripped 4 conductors simultaneously, and you're ready to pre-tin, and you're ready to prep these for a board install. So I'll show you how I even how I flex these up, and I get a nice coatings on these conductors. Okay, so either before or after I strip the my conductors down and prep them for tinning, I'll take my soldering iron, and I'll take the tip right here as you see, and I'll just apply a liberal amount of solder, and I'm going to coat this with a nice big bubble. Just a nice big bubble of solder, very generous amount. Now I'll show you what to do with the cables since the iron's been prepared. Okay, so here you can see some very distressed and some very old flux paste, but it's just as effective, and this is an excellent performer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip my conductors, as you can see in frame, into this solution. I'm going to massage it in there. Think of this as like something you'd use on your own loins before going to night-night land. Alright, so we get a nice liberal application of that on the conductors, and we'll go back to the iron shot. So before applying the flux to the conductors, you'll remember that we, liberally coated the soldering tip with a generous amount of solder. So let me show you what happens now. And take your fingers, unflail them out, and you're ready to go. Alright, so we're going to be inserting these conductors into the SNES mainboard, and these are going to go in those really small vias. So just to ensure that we get a good wetted joint, You don't have to use no clean flux. You can use this again. So our pre-10 conductors, we're just going to go right ahead. We're going to dip them back in there. You don't need so much. Wipe it off a bit until you have a good coating on your bare copper material. Okay, so we've got our 4 conductors here fluxed up, pre-tinned, ready to go. Now we're ready to introduce these into the main board. So again, we have composite sink, red, green, and blue vias that we're going to be attaching to. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. Now you may have a little difficulty with this at first, as I said before. You know, this may take a couple of times for you to get and to do right and well, but once you get this process, and once you get this sort of technique down, these will go so much faster. So as you can see, basically, with the pitch of this ribbon cable, the first 3 vias here for red, green, blue pretty much are self-aligning. So what you need to do is you just need to line this son of a gun up, get it in a position just like this, hunker it down just a little bit, and you can see them inserting. Now as for Mr. Yellow here, we'll just finagle him. We'll finagle him into position, and there he goes. So now that once you get this in here, we're going to start pushing down, flattening the cable against the board just like this. Just like this. And once you have that in position like this, we'll go ahead and we'll take our soldering iron. We'll load up just a bit of solder. Just a drop is all it takes, and we're going to start. Ooh, I'm sorry, I jumped the camera there. We're going to start tacking these in place. Tacking these in place. Tacking these in place. And tacking these in place. Now these aren't soldered well. Our work is just being held so we can let go, have a free hand, and come back with some solder. And that is done. Those are very wetted, or those are thoroughly wetted joints, and we've soldered all the conductors. So now we can move on. When I designed this SNESRGB board a long time ago now, I did it in a way to where I could consolidate all the passive components, the attenuation network, everything is just consolidated to a very small footprint. But as a consequence of that, that requires us to remove 2 resistor legs that are in our way. They're actually impede the installation of this board. And so right under the multi-out here, you have these 2 component legs from a capacitor on the top layer. So we're just going to come in here and flush cut these out. Alrighty, so now that we've got that out of the way, and you'll see a lot of people, they'll talk about, you know, putting a piece of sticky tape on the bottom of this. Well, I've pulled the solder resist down on these vias, and on top of that, I have positioned wherever the vias are, they aren't anywhere near any components that they can short through or to, so you really don't need to worry about putting any kind of insulation barrier on the bottom of this thing. So the only thing that you need to be concerned about is taking the damn thing, lining it up on the multi-out pins, and positioning it. That's all there is. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and quickly solder this into place. Okay, the board has been anchored. So on the input side of my SNESRGB board, you have Luma, Chroma, red, green, blue, and composite sink. So from red, green, blue, and composite sink, these 4 pins on the right side of the chip are what we're interested in when we're wiring up our RGB conductors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just position the ribbon cable over that area, which it pretty much naturally follows that designation as it currently is, but I can see where it goes. So I'm going to come in here with some snip tips, with some little snippety doodah flush cutters, and I'm going to find where I need to make this cut. So I can see that the end of the pads are about right here. This is the length of the pad. It stops at about right here, right? So I'm going to bring my conductor in here, and I'm going to cut at the very tops of these, just like this, flush across the board. Just like that right there. So now if you notice, our cable has a little extra slack. We're going to get rid of that when we strip these down, and we'll pre-tin these, and we'll get this ready to go. And I'm not going to go through that process. You've already seen that done. It's the same principle here. We're just doing the opposite end of the cable. So I'll do that off camera, and we'll come right back to this. So when you get ready to solder to the input side of my SNESRGB board, you'll want to start with the composite sink. It's the first signal in the line, and once you get that done and out of the way, it'll kind of free your hands up, and all the other, the three remaining conductors, they kind of go really fast. So let's just get this out of the way. Beautiful. Okay, so we got composite sink out of the way. Let's go ahead and finish this off really fast. And that's it, guys. It's really that fast, and it's really that simple. Okay, one more note before we finish all this up. You may have noticed that I have two jumpers here. This is a TTL jumper. Now, typically, during the whole design of this thing, I decided to put this in because there is such a mixed and unstandardized variety of SCART cables. So if you're using a system that syncs off of composite sync with the Super Nintendo, they may or may not have proper attenuation in the cable. So if they are attenuating, in other words, if there's a resistor on the C-Sync line in the SCART cable, you'll want to short this so you're outputting a TTL C-Sync through the SCART cable. If there is no resistor in the cable and it's just a pass-through cable, which quite frankly, all of these cables should be pass-through cables, and the C-Sync amplitude should be handled on the mod, in my opinion, but nonetheless, that's an argument for another day. That's what this is for. So, that's an explanation for that. Thought it was a pretty good idea. Thought it was a pretty neat idea. And I thought I would incorporate that into my design. So, you've got that. And then over here, I have a solder strap for the low pass filter of the 7374. You can enable the low order filter by changing this strap position from the off position to the on position, but by default the board is configured to have the low pass low order filter disabled. So just wanted to explain these two. Like I said, if you have a cable with no resistor, it's pass through, and you want to send a proper, well, pseudo-proper 75 ohm transmission-friendly C-Sync signal, keep this open. If you've got a resistor in there that's kind of sort of doing the job, but probably in a really crappy way, short this so it's outputting a TTL C-Sync. Okay, guys, that pretty much covers everything on the SNES RGB board install. I always finish everything off when I'm done, install's complete. I'll take a little distilled water and 90% isopropyl. I'll just shoot that on the board. I will scrub away all of this old, this spent and often unactivated, no clean flux if you use it, or if you use a rosin paste like we used earlier. We'll just come in here and we'll scrub everything out, let this dry thoroughly. And we clean up our work that way. So, beautiful install, very straightforward, very simple. But I don't think we're done. No. I think you guys want to see S-Video. So here we go. Okay, now in order to do S-Video, we have to remove the 7805 heat shield, or the heat sink rather. So, there's a screw in the back, right here. This is going to have to be ejected. And there are two screws here on the bottom. These are the anchor points for the actual heat sink itself. So let's remove these three screws, and I'll do this off camera because this is really simple and you don't need to see this, but we'll take these out and we'll get to the chip. Okay, so we've loosened up the anchor screws for the heat sink, and we've removed the screw that fastens the 7805 linear regulator to the heat sink. So let's just topple this bad boy off. And what we'll be working with directly is this right here. This little jewel is a precious, glorious thing. Let's zoom in. Okay, so there are two pins here that we're most interested in. S-video is derived from chroma and luma signals. So chroma is found right here on pin 12. Luma is found on pin 15, which is right about here. This dot here, this is a landmark for pin 15. So just count 2 up from here. So this is 13, 14, 15 by the dot, 16, 17. So 12 and 17. Let's prep these pins. So we can start with just 2 drops of no clean on each side, just like that. And we'll do a solder to joint technique. So I'm just going to introduce the solder, rest it over the joint, and we're just going to come in and contact with a little heat. Boom, that's ready. Let's do pin 17. Ready to rock. Let's do it. Okay, so we're looking at pins 12 and 17 here. These are the chroma and luma signals that we must attach to off of the SRGB encoder. I've got a 2-conductor ribbon cable here that's been pre-cut, pre-tinned, and it is cut to length. And I'm not going to show that stuff again because you've seen it, you know what's going on, you can do it now yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tack these into place and run S-video. Alrighty, there's chroma. Let's flip this around so you can get a good angle of the luma signal. And there's luma. It is that simple. Okay, so now that we've got chroma and luma properly wired into the sRGB encoder, we need to run these cable runs to the actual SNESRGB chip. Now this is something that I have complained about and preached about for years and years and years. 99.9% of all of the S-video mods I've ever seen on the SNES Mini, the cables run to the left side in this direction of the actual encoder itself. Now when you do that, that means that the cable has to run from here and pan all the way over, cross the RGB stuff, and then attach right here. Well, I designed my SNES RGB board so that chroma and luma are on the left for a specific reason. When you run these cables to the left, it's the shortest wire path between the encoder and the board. So just move these bastards to the left and call it a day. Okay guys, so we'll finish this up with S-video. Let's solder these conductors in place. We'll start with chroma, which is our orange wire here in this case. Okay. Then we'll just move over. We'll grab luma like so. Get it into position here just like that, and you can use tweezers. You may find it easier to work with some of this finer stuff. I certainly use them. Beautiful joint, and it's that simple. Okay guys, there you go. That's the entire mod, both RGB and S-video. Fairly straightforward and simple to do. Really nothing much else to say. I'll do a very sort of a quick rundown on reassembling this thing, because I think there's one thing that needs to be addressed. So let's take a look at reassembly real quick. So it's important to note that when you're reassembling your system, you need to be very careful about resetting these screws. Now you saw me use a power device to remove every screw in this Unitarian. You don't want to do that when you reassemble. It's important that when you put these screws back into the bosses, that you align the threads so that the screw will go into the original threads of the boss. If you don't do that, what you're going to do is you're going to strip out the inner screw bosses, and they're not going to hold and make a very tight connection. So let me show you how you can absolutely ensure that you are properly reseating these screws. So I want to just go ahead and drop this screw in here like this. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I want to take just my Phillips bit here, and I want to put it in there, and I'm going to start backing it out. Backing it out, and you're going to hear it click. Hear that? I'll do it one more time. Okay. When you hear that click, that means that the thread has reached the top of its limit. So you're totally reset by that point, and when you go to screw this in now, it's going to retrace the original threads that came out of it. And when you do this, you'll know that you're doing it right, because it takes very little effort. It actually takes no effort to screw these back in. I'm just using my fingers, and it's very loose, and you only get them hand or really finger tight. That's as tight as you want it. See, that's just my middle finger and my thumb. That's plenty tight. So when you reassemble this thing, keep that in mind, and do it like a champion. So video might have been kind of crude, but I think it pretty much goes over everything that's really necessary in order to do this, to install my SNES RGB board here. So hopefully you'll find great use in this, and this will help you in your bodies, and plenty more to come where this came from. So as always, thank you for being my friends, and Lord Voltar wishes you happy time tonight.